Whatever time you're watching us, thanks for joining us. It's Okuma Wednesday, gang. I know we started off the morning fishing live at Catalina with Captain Justin Botrell, but now you got Captain Dave and Captain Bill Varney joining you here with the Surffish Wednesday Okuma report, facts, fiction, whatever we can come up with. Bill and I always have a blast doing this show on Wednesdays. Hey, Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you, Dave.
I'm super excited today because we got some crazy stuff going on in the ocean right now. And you were predicting this for the last couple of weeks. You've been talking about it. Well, Justin's out at Catalina right now, and it is absolutely happening. Big time swell. And you were telling me right before we went live how big they're predicting this thing. And you as a surfer, you got a half a clue what the heck you're talking about. So we'll show some of those pictures you sent me, but let's talk about what the holy heck are we talking about? What is going on right now, gang?
We have a big change coming up here in the ocean, to say the least. You know, as you know, Dave, coming up this week is, of course, the beginning of winter. We have a couple things coming up next week. We've got the winter solstice. Now, what is that? That is the shortest daytime day of the year. So that's coming up next week. And so what does that mean? That means especially for us in the mountains, that means every single day after the winter solstice, let's say starting on Christmas going on, each day we'll have a little bit more time of sunlight, a little bit more time for us to go fishing, a little bit closer for us to get to the summer. So we're turning a corner this upcoming week. But the ocean is also turning a major corner. We talked about this just 2 weeks ago about this big south swell. How unusual is that? In December, that came all the way up from a giant cyclone off of the Aleutian coast, off of Antarctica, from the South Pacific. Off of the tip of Antarctica came this giant cyclone, 60-foot seas that sent swells 6,000 miles into California. And what that did was it basically took the northwest swells and the south swells, and it sandwiched the water in the California bight, almost like the inside of an Oreo cookie. It held it in there, that delicious center. In other words, it didn't allow water temperatures to change very much. They might have gone up 1 degree, and then later they went down 1 degree, which led to some really good surf fishing in Southern California. Now with this upcoming week, we're seeing exactly the opposite of that. We're seeing the true sign of Mr. Winter. He's on his way. So today that swell's beginning. As you said with Justin earlier today, you could see on the boat as that swell was beginning to hit over in Catalina. That swell is going to make its way all up and down the California coast, the west coast of the United States. And what's going to happen is it's beginning now with, are you ready for this? The little waves. Today is the little waves. Tomorrow they'll be a little bigger. It's starting with a little surf right now. And then what's going to happen is that storm, which was out of the Aleutians in Alaska, formed way up there near the coast. We have more of a northwest angle in this swell. That is going to change over the next 3 days dramatically as 2 large hurricanes, which they would call in Alaska, 2 large storms, are going to make their way directly out of the Aleutians to the south over Hawaii. And then one will be 1,900 miles from Southern California. The other will be 900 miles from California, straight west of Hermosa Beach. The storm that's in front has got 40-foot seas, and the storm that's in back has got 60 to 80-foot seas, which means that by Christmas Day, we may see waves on west-facing beaches with 15-plus foot faces. So if you're a surf angler, you want to hide from that. Malibu, Orange County, Cabrillo Beach, a lot of those places. I just wanted to read for everybody, because this is really important, a warning by NOAA. Now, many of you remember a few years ago at the surf contest, the big wave surf contest at Half Moon Bay up in Central California, of all of the people who were injured and had to go to the hospital, who were watching it from the shore when a large rogue wave came in and wiped them out. It was on live TV. I must admit at the time it was pretty funny to watch. After that, it was sad that people were hurt. It absolutely wiped out like 100 people. It was crazy. And then many of you may remember, I think it was last year in Ventura, where a bunch of bystanders, along with a fire truck and firemen who were parked on a road adjacent to the water, were overcome by a huge wave that almost washed away a fire truck. So you really have to be careful with these swells. This is what NOAA has to say. Surf directly from the west with 15-foot face heights will cause concerns by creating numerous hazards, not just in the surf zone, but also for bystanders on the beach, piers, jetties, etc. Powerful surf like this can create rogue waves that quickly wash up much farther onto the sand, bike paths, and even into parking lots, and easily overtake jetties with flooding waves known to pull people out to sea and to their death. Caution is strongly advised. So for all of you, whether you're observing or you're down there surf fishing on the beach or walking around the harbor or any of those things, Dave and I have this warning for you. If you're going to go out on the rocks, nothing wrong with that. Always be sure that when you go out, before you take time to cast your line out or for some reason get down near the water, always look backwards and find an escape route. Always keep your eyes on the water. If you see an incoming rogue wave, don't wait for it to reach the rocks. Get yourself high up on those rocks and be sure to know where your escape route is. That is the way that you're going to survive. Over all of my 60 plus years of surf fishing, I have seen numerous people wash from the rocks, and unfortunately, some of them lose their lives. So be very careful during this period of time. And by the way, this is a great time for everybody to get down to the beach with their relatives and friends who come to visit them from other states around Christmas time, for them to see how big this surf is in Southern California. It'll be something to see. You'll literally feel it standing on the sand.
And this, gang, is like Bill's saying, this is a major event that we have not seen since 2014. The last time we saw cold water in Southern California was 2014. The last time we saw any real type of storms, 2014. This is going to be catastrophic change. If there is any wind involved in this thing, this is the kind of swell that takes down all of our piers. This is the kind of swell that we had in 83. This is the one you read about. This is what we're coming up against here in the next week and a half. It can be catastrophic. We've been praying and hoping for some weather to get the lobsters to crawl. I think the good Lord answered our prayers, but he didn't quite understand what we were trying to say. We didn't want a catastrophic event. We just wanted some swells. We can all just hope and pray that we don't get a lot of wind with this, because like Bill's saying, this swell, when it hits the beach, if they're calling for 60 foot offshore, that's not what's going to be on the beach. Let's just be honest. But if you throw some wind behind it, now it's going to be super unpredictable. When you got a giant swell like that rolling around out there, it's going to be super unpredictable. So like Bill said, a lot of us didn't grow up in Southern California that are watching the show today. This is going to be something that most of you have never experienced. Bill and I growing up here, this is kind of what winter was like. This is a true Southern California winter. This is what it's like. The water can get down into, and it does. It gets down into the high 40s, low 50s. It can fluctuate now, where the last few years, like Bill was saying, we were in an Oreo cookie type of deal. Now, the divers, everybody that I talked to, the cold water goes from the surface to the bottom, which it has not done for 10 plus years here in Southern California. It's always been like a level of cool water on the top, but the warm water was on the bottom. So when we'd get a bunch of wind and swell, it would turn it upside down, and Bill and I would be blown away. We would come out and go, The wind just blew for 3 days and the water got warmer. That didn't make sense to Bill and I, because we were historically, if the wind blows, the water dumps. Well, now we're in winter. This is winter, Southern California. It's a good thing. Those of you that have not lived through this, this is a cleansing of our coastline. This brings in tons of new nutrients that we haven't seen, because cold water is what we're supposed to have in Southern California in wintertime. So this is very exciting for Bill and I. Those of you that only like to catch tuna and live in Southern California, like I tell you every time you call me on the phone, it's time to move. You're going to have to move. You got to go down to like Cabo or maybe Central America or Africa or somewhere like that if you only like to catch tuna, because historically, the way this looks to Bill and I, it's going to be a rough tuna year. You may see some yellowfin tuna, you may see some Dorado, but that won't be until September. It's going to take a phenomenal amount of bitchin' weather for the water to warm up. It's going to be weather-related water warming now. Right, Bill? Totally
exactly. Different. Definitely not current related. It's going to be weather related. So that wind, that swell, it's going to push all that down from the northwest. There's going to be no mitigating south swells to slow it down, and it's just going to turn the water over. Now, what we hope for is that it will progressively make its way down the coast. We don't want the water to turn over here locally overnight and have a 6-degree drop. We want each week to be a degree or so as we're going down. So we'll have to watch that. We don't know what's going to happen with this storm system that's going to come in right around Christmas time. It might be a big rainmaker in Southern California, or it could be an inside slider and miss us completely. We'll know more in about 5 days.
Yeah, we will. We'll know a lot more. And gang, Justin's fishing live. I'm watching him in the bottom. If you guys were watching when Bill was talking, I'm looking, because he's on the move. He's moving around a little bit. But if he has something, he hooks something or something happens, we'll go live. But right now, if you didn't see his show this morning, he started out the morning with a 28-inch halibut that fit perfect in that Deckhand Sports kill bag. It's in the bag. He showed it to everybody. We'll re-show it later on, because as soon as Bill and I are done talking about this surf fishing and all this weather and all this swell, we'll go back to Justin live around 1 o'clock, 1:15, and he's going to fish all the way till dark. He's got Paul on the boat, one of his regulars. Every Wednesday you can see Paul fishing on the boat, and today's no exception. But they're talking about that swell at Catalina. I was looking on Buoy Weather last night, and they were saying that there's a possibility that swell just in the open channel, not on the beaches, it's going to be somewhere between 12 and 15 foot this weekend in the middle of the channel between Catalina and Dana Point. Yeah, it's going to be 12 to 14 seconds apart. But we haven't seen that in a very long time.
Oh, Bill. My gosh. Anytime you get with the distance between swells, 12 seconds or shorter, it kind of falls into the wind swell category, which means that you're going to have victory at sea out there. As this swell progresses over the next week, there's going to be bigger, longer period gaps between the swells, where we'll be once again up around that 16 second, 18 seconds, depending on how big it is. You can surf fish in that stuff. But man, when you got that 6 second, 8 second, 10 second, 12 second stuff, Dave, it is impossible. There is a wave coming in on you every second. And, these long range, 6,000 mile ground swells are very well formed swells. So you get 4 or 5 in a row, and they're about equally distanced and so on and so forth. When you have these shorter duration swell periods that are caused by storms that are closer to shore, remember, we got a 900-mile storm and a 1,900-mile versus 6,000, it bunches up those swells close together, and it varies their size. So it makes it much more difficult not only to fish, but of course to surf, because you're going to get caught inside on the big outside set, So that's what we're going to see coming up this week. It's going to be places like in Palos Verdes, like Wally's, Lanada Bay, probably the Cove, are just going to be epic. I would really suggest everybody, if you can, around Christmas, to take a drive down to the beach wherever you live and take a look at it. It should be exciting.
Yeah, just go get some video of this. This is going to be an insane event, gang. You're going to be talking about this for years to come, because really, you look in the history of what's going on in Southern California, a lot of people, Bill, just got here in the last 10, 12 years. They're not from around here. They don't really understand. Southern California is a cold water place. 67 to, if we got 70-degree water when Bill and I were growing up, that was like a giant event. That was a huge event. We never saw 72, 75-degree water in Southern California. I don't care if it was July, August, September. That just did not happen. You guys have been living in something very, very special since 2015 that we had never seen before. 10 years of warm water in Southern California. What we're going to be coming into now is going to be a normal event. You're going to see kelp start to grow in areas that you guys have never seen it before. Bill and I have seen it, but most of you have never seen it before. The California coastline, when my father was a little boy fishing for a living, he told me that the kelp went from the Mexican border to Alaska, and there was very little break in it. It was just one massive, giant kelp bed. And that's how it was, because the water, the water always got cold in the wintertime. Even in 83, when we had our big El Nino, the water still got cold in the wintertime. We just came out of an anomaly of almost 11 years, no, 10 years of cold water, or warm water. And warm water kills the kelp, gang. It just, there's no way around it. It's the fastest growing plant in the world, but if the conditions aren't right, it can't hang, and it can't hang in that warm water. So we're going to see all kinds of cool changes. One thing I wanted to say, though, Bill, these people don't understand. It's going to be extremely difficult when this swell leaves to fish the surf because of the growth. All that kelp, all that seaweed, all that sargasso grass, all that stuff that's been growing on the bottom for the last 10 years, it's all going to get ripped off the bottom, which is going to clean all the rocks and get ready for the hold fast to take place, because the hold fast of the kelp hasn't been able to grab a hold of anything because we have so much warm water plants that we've never had in California that stop the kelp from growing. And I know I'm off on a kelp tangent now, but this is really exciting for Bill and I.
It really is, Dave. And you and I have talked about this on the show before. I know it's been months since we talked about it, so it's definitely important to bring it up again. And it really is so interesting. So my family moved in 1922 from where the USC campus is today, Vermont Next Position, to Hermosa Beach. My dad was born in 1928. My dad used to tell me all the time when he was growing up as a kid, from Palos Verdes all the way to Santa Monica, number one, it was a rocky beach. There was sand behind the rocks, but down around the water level was literally miles of like river rock there. That has all been covered by sand now, as you know. But more importantly, my dad would tell me that back in the day, the kelp went from Palos Verdes, just like you said, in the Orange County, all the way to Malibu, really all the way to Ventura, and out 3 or 4 miles. And it was so thick that it was that. Remember, back in Southern California, the reason Southern California grew so quickly in the 1800s is because they were unable to take lumber, which was harvested from the Northwest, Washington in particular, later Oregon, over the Cascades by train. So it was all brought to Southern California by boat, unloaded on these huge lumber piers, which Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo had lumber piers, and then all taken by train to places like Chicago. So back in those days, they had to bring these huge, there were those gigantic clipper ships. They had to bring those ships into port, into these docks. They couldn't do it because the kelp in Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo, Torrance, PV was so thick, these giant ships would get stuck in it. So they had kelp cutters. And my dad told me that at some days there were so many kelp cutters on the water at the same time that you had to paddle in from surfing. Of course, back in those days, they surfed on redwood surfboards that had a cork in the bottom of it that they'd have to paddle in and wait for the kelp cutters to go by. So that really shows you how much has changed. And some of that in part is to water temperature. And of course, as Dave and I have discussed so many other times, the greater reason for that lack of kelp in these areas is because of water quality. That has everything to do with it. So kelp is really important. And the last point I want to make, Dave, and I think it's really germane, and we're really thankful. I said a prayer this morning regarding it. If this swell situation that is coming up beginning today and building through next week was to have happened last week during these astronomical high tides, I'll give you an example. We had several days that the high tide was more than 8.1 feet from low tide to high tide. Coming up next week when we see this big swell, Dave, there's going to be numerous days because we're in a NEAP, N-E-A-P, NEAP tide period, where the tidal change between low and high will only be 1.1 foot. If we had these 8-foot swings during this giant swell, you could say goodbye to King Harbor and the Redondo Pier and maybe the Hermosa Pier. So we're very blessed, honestly, that this swell is coming up this week instead of last week.
Yes, we are. Hey, gang, I want to hold on because we're going to go back to the kelp cutter thing because there's a lot of myth, a lot of false information about the kelp cutters. We're going to talk about that in a minute. We got a lot of surf fishing to talk about. Look at this reel that Okuma has. And these guys, the coastal worldwide fishermen that are fishing the beaches in the Gulf of Mexico doing this shark fishing. That's why I want to show you this reel. This was designed by Okuma for these land-based shark fishermen. Check this thing out. This is a phenomenal reel.
Hey guys, this is John Bretzel with Okuma Fishing Tackle. What we have here is an exciting new introduction to the Makaira family. The Makaira LBS, or land-based shark reel. It's a special edition model, going to be coming in a 50 wide as well as an 80 size. I've worked very closely with a lot of the hardcore land-based shark guys, and we wanted to make a reel just for you anglers, something that's just dedicated to shark fishing. And so what we've done is we built a reel, we like to say it's murdered out. Everything's blacked out, titanium vacuum coated parts for the harness lugs and the drag plates. You got the black shifter. The other thing we've done to really dedicate this reel to the shark anglers is that it's got the custom 125 millimeter handle for extra cranking leverage. It's going to come with a T-bar handle knob, which everybody loves, but this reel's also been upgraded where regular Makairas have an aluminum shaft. This is upgraded to a stainless steel shaft to make it that much stronger for the land-based shark guys. It also comes with dual drag cams, so our traditional aggressive drag cam that gives you really high drag output, as well as a TDC drag cam so that you can customize the drag settings all in one reel. We've also upgraded the clicker. It's got a new heavy-duty clicker design, which is all new in the Makaira LBS reel. It also features the custom etching on the left side plate, which really makes this reel dedicated to land-based shark guys. We utilize the hammerhead shark just because that's a good symbol for something that's just ultimate strength and durability. The other thing with this reel, the 50 wide, if you look at the drag system, it's going to have a carbonite DFD. At strike, it'll output a max of 60 pounds of drag. At full, it'll be 85 pounds of drag. When you look at the new 80 size, it'll be 70 pounds at strike and 100 pounds at full. As far as line capacity goes, the 50 wide holds 1,000 yards of 130 pound hollow core braided line. When you look at the new 80 size, which features an open top frame design, that'll hold 1,000 yards of 200 pound braided line. So if you're a hardcore shark angler and you like to do the land-based shark deal, you definitely want to take a look at these new reels. The 50 wide will retail for $769. The new 80 will be $999. If you want to find out more information about the new LBS reels, check it out on okumafishingusa.com.
And there's the QR code up there on the screen, gang. You can check out all that stuff we're talking about with that reel. You can see the coastal worldwide guys fishing sharks with that reel. It's a phenomenal product. I want you all to go check it out. Grab the QR code and run over there and look at that real quick. There you go, gang. What Bill's got the picture up on the screen right there, that is a common kelp cutter. And if you're our age, you saw these all over along the Southern California coast. One thing that people didn't understand, that kelp cutting rig right there, that would mow, it's like mowing the lawn. It's exactly what it's like. The myth that people like to share is that that stuff was ripping the kelp off the bottom and that's why all the kelp's gone. No, it's like a lawnmower. That thing was rolling along and it would cut the kelp. It would cut off the first 5 or 6 feet, which was good for kelp. Those ladies that are watching the show, you know how you like to cut that inch or inch and a half of your hair off so that it grows because the ends get split in? Same thing happens with kelp. When all that kelp is laying on the surface, baking in the sun, it has a tendency to rot. So when we use kelp cutter, now the environmentalists will never allow us to use those in California. But what you don't understand is everything you use on a daily basis for your skincare, your toothpaste, your shampoo, your gels, everything you guys are using, and you're all using it every day, it's all has kelp in it because kelp is a coagulant. If your shampoo didn't have kelp in it, it would flow like a water. It would be thinner than water. Your gels, your shampoos, your lotions, all those products have kelp in them. But we're not allowed to take our own kelp in California anymore because the environmentalists stopped that. So now we have to take kelp from foreign countries to make our, well, we don't even make products in America. What am I even saying? But we might start making products in America again sometime in the middle of January. I believe there's a guy that's going to be running the country that absolutely loves America. It's kind of weird. And he may allow us to start to make products in America again. I know, which would piss off most of you tree huggers out there. I know that. You do not want us to make our products in America. But kelp is a super important product for the whole world. Now, the reason we don't have kelp in California, in Southern California, there's a couple of things. If you look at Santa Monica Bay, for example, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but Santa Monica Bay is LA's trash can. Okay? And you cannot dump trash on top of all these rocks that the kelp grows on and expect the kelp to make its way through it. That's why you're not. Do something really funny. Next time you're on a plane coming out of LAX, the first thing they do is they fly out over the ocean in Santa Monica Bay, and then they make a hard left turn, and then they head off to wherever you're going, New York, Australia, Canada, wherever you're going. But they make that big, giant turn. Point Doom, you'll see kelp. Palos Verdes, you'll see kelp. The Bay, you see no kelp. Why? That's for a different show. Same thing from Point Vincini to just below Huntington Beach, the lower part of Newport Beach. Then you see kelp again. Why? Those two areas were used as LA and California's trash cans for way too long. So it wasn't the kelp cutters, no matter what you all think and what your mother, sisters, brothers, aunts, cousin told you. The kelp cutters were good. Urban runoff. There's only two problems in the ocean in California. Urban runoff and the California sea lion. Those are the only two real problems. Unfortunately, the people that are running the show don't want to address those two problems because those two problems are problems they could actually fix, but then they'd have to spend the money that they're stealing from us on these problems. So they don't have to do that. If they don't address those problems, they can just keep taking our money. So those are the only two real problems. It's not Bill Varney taking a bunch of kids down to the beach to go fishing. It's not Dave Hansen taking a bunch of people out on a sport boat fishing. But we're not going to talk about that today because we're not supposed to talk about real problems. We're going to talk about problems. No, I'm just kidding. But I wanted everybody to understand the kelp cutters are not why there's no kelp in California. That's not why we don't have kelp. But what's really cool, this giant swell is going to clean the bottom of the ocean like you can't. It's like a scrubber, right, Bill? Talk about that for a minute.
Absolutely. And it's really going to lead to some new opportunity. When this thing comes down the coast, like you said, it's going to scrape all the stuff that is dead hanging out on the bottom down there, all that eel grass and all that stuff, that especially for the past couple of weeks where it's been so calm during the Santa Ana condition periods, it's going to sweep a lot of that off the bottom. A lot of that obviously is going to come up on to the beach. But more importantly, it's going to completely reshape the beach. Remember, Dave, over the last basically 5 months, 4 months at least, we've had all these swells coming up from the south, shaping the beach, right? Well, these new swells are coming from exactly the opposite direction. So it's going to completely change the bottom. If you had an area that had a inshore trough, which we love to fish, that's a foot wide and 50 feet long, you may go down there in a week and it's either gone or it's 2 feet wide and a mile long. So we're going to see a lot of changes. And I'm telling you, not next week, but the week after that, we're going to get closer to the new moon period. We're going to have some astronomical tides. I would look at my tide calendar, find the lowest tide day, and go take a walk on the beach, on your beach that you like to go fishing on. Go take a walk on that beach that day at low tide, figure out where the new troughs are, the new holes are, if there's any new structure that's now exposed, line that up with something permanent behind you that's on the beach, and then wait for that high tide to fill in either the next day or that next weekend. Come back to that spot, line yourself right up with that thing, that building you saw right in front of that new trough, and fish right there. That is the secret. That is where the fish are going to be.
Yeah, and then also when you go down there to the beach, Bill, at this low tide, you're going to see stuff that you can't comprehend. You're going to see a lot of lobster traps. A lot of the guys, they're moving. I was talking to the president of the Lobster Association this morning. The guys are in full force right now. Every commercial lobster fisherman is moving all their gear out to deep, deep, deep water, 80 plus feet. Got to get it off the beaches right now because it'll disappear. They're going to be a phenomenal amount of lobsters. Of lobster traps lost. There's going to be a phenomenal amount of stuff lost, and it's going to end up on the beaches, gang. You're going to see all kinds of stuff you haven't seen. But the really weird thing, you're going to see so much grass. The beaches are going to be covered in this grass. And you guys haven't seen it before. It's going to be amazing. The amount of debris, natural. I'm not talking about trash. I'm talking about debris from the bottom of the ocean that's going to get ripped off, which is a cleaning effect. We're actually clean. It's like you scrubbing a pot or a pan. We're going to scrub the bottom of the ocean. It's going to be so good. When we come out of this, and we're looking at this in February, March, it's going to be a whole different ocean. Like Bill said, whatever you're doing right now, like Jason Cutter and Matt Ryan, those guys that surf fish all the time and talk to you every day, get ready. It's like Bill and I grew up with an Etch-a-Sketch, and we drew a beautiful picture, and then our mom took it and threw it in the toy box, and ruined that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to be like an Etch-a-Sketch if you're old enough to know what the hell that is.
That's right. It's going to be tabula rasa down at the beach, boy. It's going to be starting over from the beginning. And that, like I said, that provides so many different options. And what's really cool about it is that, like you said, Dave, it like scrubs and what it, besides the bottom, it does such a good job of scrubbing all these dead things that are non-edible and stuff off of jetties, and then leaves available on jetties all of the limpets and crabs and mussel and all that stuff. And so when the surf comes later and begins to break that and wash that off, all of those fish are going to be in and around that rock area, particularly be halibut feeding right in those zones, because all of the rest of the beach is going to be clean to food for them. It's all going to be accumulated now near that jetty structure.
Yeah, it is. And then Brett, you're absolutely right. Gang, the fish are going to go deeper because they have to. If they're in the shallow water, I don't care if it's a surf perch, if it's a halibut, if it's a corvina, they got to get off the beach too. They can feel this coming because the swell, it just didn't start at 16 feet. It started today. It's going to be like 5 to 8 feet today. The fish are already boogieing. They're not dumb. They didn't get to where they are today by being dumb. Yeah, it's going to catch some of the younger ones off guard. You're going to see a lot of fish on the beach because they didn't understand what's about to happen. The older fish, they're moving out to deeper water. You have to, gang. It's only logical. It's going to be a phenomenal event. It's going to be different than anything we've ever seen in the last 11 years, but it's going to be good. It's good for the whole thing. Every part of it's good. It's going to suck for a couple of weeks, though. It's going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, if you do decide to go down to the beach, like Bill said in the beginning of this podcast, now we got so many more people watching. You got to be careful. Bill, go. We didn't have hardly anybody talk here when you were talking about that swell and Noah and what happened up there at the surf contest, but go over that again, because there's a lot of people that are going to get caught in this thing. If you're on a break wall or something, you might not make it home.
Absolutely. It's, this is a hazardous event coming up. And as I read earlier, and I'll just give you kind of the shorter version of it, Noah's statement was surf directly from the west, which in itself is unusual in Southern California. It normally comes from the northwest, so it comes at an angle. This surf event, which is 2 storms initially here, is straight off of Hermosa Beach. It's like if you look straight out in the water toward Japan, there they are. With 15-foot face heights will cause concerns by creating numerous hazards, not just in surf zones, but also for bystanders on the beach, piers, jetties, etc. And that includes places like, obviously, the sand, bike paths, and even into parking lots, which is what we saw last year when the fire truck, the firemen, and a bunch of locals in Ventura were almost washed away by surf that came into a neighborhood there. So you've got to be very careful. And the most important thing to remember, and I'm freezing up here, I don't know if my sound is working, is that if you're going out, okay, good. Is if you're going out on a jetty, you're going out on the rocks, whether you're going out there to watch or to fish, always keep your eye on the water at all times, looking for a rogue wave, number one. And number two, which should be number one more importantly, is when you get out there, turn around, find an escape route, so that if a bigger wave comes in and you have to get off the rocks quickly, you know how you can do that. Always keep your eye on the water.
And I would suggest not even going right now. I would suggest watching it from the land. Bill will be back on in a minute. He's just resetting his camera. There he is. You're not frozen anymore. So watch it from the land. Make videos. Send Bill and I some videos. Let us see what kind of waves you're seeing, because Bill's in Colorado. He's not going to, hopefully the waves don't make it there. And I'm in Cabo, and we're not going to see that. It's not going to make its way down there. But what you guys are going to see, some unbelievable event. Lori, this swell that, Bill, just go over what the size of the swell is, because a lot of people weren't on here when you talked about it. This swell, gang, it's amazing when you hear these numbers. Think about this for a second. These swells are going to be big, higher than your 3-story house. Go ahead, Bill. Tell them how big the swell is supposed to be. Uh-oh, now we lost your sound. Now we lost your sound. I don't know. We lost Bill's sound. Gang, they're talking in the mid-channel this weekend that it's going to be, Shawnee, I'm on my show. They're calling for, in the mid-channel, they're calling for the swell to be this weekend 15 feet between Catalina and the beach. It's going to come onto the beach. It's going to be massive. There he is. Try it now.
There we go.
Woo!
Man, I'm back like a bad habit.
Tell them how big the swell is going to be.
So normally during the winter months, we have our storms and our swells that originate in the Aleutian Islands up really kind of right next to Russia, and then move their way down along the coast. And then the swells come out at basically at the beach at a northwest fetch. In other words, at an angle to the beach. Right now, we have 2 storms. One is 900 miles off of Southern California. The other is 1,900 miles. They are directly west of Hermosa Beach. So instead of being way up in Alaska, Canada, and coming down the west coast, these are straight out to sea. They're coming right at us. There's nothing to stop them or to slow them down or to mitigate them in any way. The storm that's 900 miles away, those are the swells that will begin hitting us this weekend. There's one going on right now that's in front of those, but it's more of a northwest swell. But this first swell coming in through this weekend is being generated from 40-foot seas. Those are big seas. That's some big waves. The 1900-mile storm has waves 60 or swells 60 to 80 feet in height. So NOAA is predicting that on west-facing beaches, it will not be uncommon to see waves with a 15 to maybe 20-foot plus face. Some really, really big surf. And that's what we're really, keeping our eye on for this beginning this weekend and then upcoming this week all the way into Christmas time.
And Glenn, you can find all this information on the NOAA website. You can also find it on Buoy Weather, windy.com. All these places are going to be showing swells, and you're going to think something's wrong. You're going to, because you've never seen numbers like these, most of you in Southern California. So you're going to think, wait a minute, there's something wrong. They're calling for 15-foot seas this weekend between Catalina and the beach, and it's going to be 12 to 14. If it's a 15-foot swell and it's 12 seconds apart, that's not a lot of time. It can't get any closer, gang. It can't be closer to be that big. If it's closer and that big, that I don't even know what that would be like, but it's going to be very, very interesting. And as we move into this winter, a lot of these weather channels and weather, they're going to have a hard time keeping up with it, because when you have the massive amount of cold water on the ocean, it causes unstable air like you can't even believe. So they could call for a 12-foot wave swell at 14 seconds with no wind, but the next thing you know, the wind will create itself out there. So just be super cognizant, like Bill said. It's all about being safe right now. If you do need to go out on your boat, remember, a lot of the harbors up and down the coast are going to have a wave breaking across the entrance that you have never seen before. This is a weird, weird deal, like Bill was saying. Things facing to the west, that's a weird thing. You come out of your harbor mouth and look at your compass and go, wow, that's dead center in the middle of the mouth of the harbor coming in out of the west. And most harbor mouths have a big sand spit in front of them because of all the runoff and all the things that have happened over the last 11 years. So it's going to break. It's what they call up in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, or back east, it's called the bar. We got a possibility of a bar kind of a break on a lot of the harbors. The ones that are south-facing harbors, not so much, but the ones that are north-facing, there's just so many entities to this thing. And next week, Bill and I will talk more about it, because next week on Wednesday, we'll be fully involved in this thing. We will know exactly what's going on. But if you're going to go to the beach, be so careful. And if you're going to go out on your boat and you want to just go see what it's like on your boat, don't bring your children. You want to be dumb? You go be dumb without your kids. Your kids don't deserve your stupidity. You go on out there on your boat. We'll read about you later, but don't take your children. You don't want to read about the kids out there. You can be dumb all day long. Don't take your spouse and don't take your kids. Go out on your boat by yourself and go see what it's really like. So
absolutely. And I encourage anybody who's watching the show who lives up in the Central Coast, if you could take some video or some pictures for us of the Morro Bay Harbor entrance. I can't wait to see that. I don't know if all of you who are watching this have ever gone to YouTube and watched the Coast Guard with their unsinkable boat do some in and out of the harbor there in Morro Bay when the surf is like 5-6 foot breaking at the entrance. So we're going to see surf up there in the Central Coast literally breaking over the, I'm not going to say over the top, but over the up to the center of that gigantic rock at Morro Bay. It's going to be something else.
So Devin has a question for you, Bill. Before the show ends, Bill, could you give us a tutorial on how to switch up your tactics during a strong offshore Santa Ana?
Yeah, remember all the sayings we use in fishing? Fish bite best when the wind's from the west. Fish bite least when the wind is from the east, which is a Santa Ana condition. Not always true. Sometimes it seems true, not always true. But this is how I really switch up when those Santa Anas set up. And we're going to see a few more of those probably going into the beginning of January before they're over for the season. When the wind blows offshore like that from the Santa Anas, it's although it's a bit windy on the beach normally, especially in the berm before you walk down to the edge of the water is very calm. And that is always a good time to fish. And what's nice about those Santa Anas is it mitigates the swell. And of course, there's no wind out of the west. It's actually coming from your back. So at times like that, you can downsize your sinker. So if I'm fishing a 3/4 ounce sliding egg sinker normally on a Carolina rig, in a Santa Ana condition, I'm going to downsize that to a 1/4 ounce sliding sinker, and I'm going to extend my leader somewhere between 20 and 34 inches in length because of the calm conditions. That allows me to use a more stealth presentation with a lighter sinker and a longer leader, 6-pound fluorocarbon leader, anywhere between 24 and 32 or 36 inches in length. And I'm going to be able to cast that out and slowly retrieve that to shore. So that's probably one of my biggest changes. And then there's another note here about how to hook ghost shrimp. And right. It says, what is the best way to hook dead ghost shrimp? I have a bunch in the freezer. Okay, here's the thing about ghost shrimp. Freezing a ghost shrimp is like freezing yogurt. Try thawing out yogurt and putting it on a hook later. They get so mushy after they're unfrozen that they're really quite difficult to hook. But if you were to have that set up and you were to find that they are effective, I personally have not found that frozen ghost shrimp thawed or effective in the surf. But if you do want to use that, if you're looking at that video, you'd want to hook them the same way with a long shank or a kale hook all the way up through the meat and then exit that hook. And we're talking from the bottom side of the ghost shrimp. Exit that hook between the legs. That's going to give your hardest area for that hook to hold on to so that when you cast it, it hopefully won't fly into pieces off. And the last thing regarding that is once you get it hooked on there, you want to have a ginger cast. You don't want to try to whale that thing out there, just a ginger cast. Remember, many of the surf fish are within 10 feet of where you're standing on the sand, probably between your toes and 50 feet out or where 80% of the fish are. So it doesn't need a real hard cast there, just a nice cast to get that bait out where the fish are and just let the current move it back and forth.
That's some good info. So you got it. Before we wrap this up, you sent me some great pictures. I want to go over these real quick. So what do we got right here?
Yeah, so I wanted to tell everybody about my saltwater guide game plan for the week. So first of all, you know, we've talked a little bit about, we're going to talk obviously about, and everybody to be able to see this, what people have been catching over the last week or so, gives us kind of an idea of that. And then for the members, of course, they get access to that incredible conditions report that goes from Santa Barbara to the Mexican border that gives you an idea of all of the different conditions that you need to know, figure out, and be familiar with before you make your way down to the beach, whether that's this weekend or into next week. There's going to be good surf fishing. You just have to know where to go for it. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow in our game plan. Also in the game plan, I promised this last week, I talked a little bit about it. We're going to talk about sidewinder crabs, line short crabs, and how we use them in the surf for surf fishing. Hardly anybody uses them. Very few people know how to use them. They're one of the most effective baits in the surf in the wintertime. So here's a look at one on your screen. That's what they look like on the rocks. We call them sidewinder crabs because they run sideways. They're known scientifically as line shore crabs. You'll find them anywhere from, gosh, the size of the nail on your little finger all the way up to the size of a $50. Any of those sizes will work in the surf. I just tell you, if you get one of the bigger ones, be sure that you count your fingers before you go fishing that day, because when you get done at the end of the day, you may have less fingers. So be careful with those. But I sent you these photos because I wanted to tell a little bit of a story about sidewinder crabs, and then really encourage as many people as we can to sign up for your saltwater guide and for my section, so you can learn every single week about what techniques you need to employ at the beach to be successful. Well, my good buddy and my mentor, Fred Oakley, he taught me about sidewinder crabs way back in the 60s, and really nobody used them back then. He actually caught and it still is, the state barred perch. I think it's 4 pounds, 11 ounces. It's hanging up in the tackle shop in Malibu, Wiley's Tackle Shop. You can go see it up there. Taxidermist put it together. It's beautiful. He used a sidewinder crab for that. So we're going to talk about how those sidewinder crabs, how we use them in the surf, how we catch them, how we keep them, how we rig them, how they're hooked, and then how we fish them in the surf to be successful. But as the years went on, I met this man, sidewinder Ron Schmidt. Ron is probably the greatest surf fisherman alive right now. He's an incredibly good surf angler. I think he's in his 80s, maybe late 80s. I'm not sure. And I met him on the rocks years and years ago. We became friends right away. And this one spot that we were fishing, we were talking about sidewinders, and he uses them all the time. He carries a 5-gallon bucket that's got like 40 of them in it at all times, wherever he goes surf fishing. He said somebody is going to catch the world record pile perch right from these rocks. He was talking about down at Bolsa Chica and Huntington Beach. And so when we were done fishing that day, I went home and I immediately Googled, whatever the state record was for pile perch. And not only was there a record there, I think it was like 2 pounds, 5 ounces or something like that, but Ron Schmidt was the record holder. And I thought, wow, if anybody knows about these pile perch, this guy must know. So I went down to the same spot the next day. I'm fishing there with a sidewinder, and I caught that pile perch. If we go back to that first picture there, Dave, real quickly. This pile perch was huge. It was 17 inches long. It weighed almost 4 pounds. It bested his state record and the world record by about 1.25 pounds. But I took that fish and I immediately put it back in the water and let it grow, hopefully to become bigger, because there was no way I was going to take away my buddy's state record there. So we're going to talk about those sidewinder crabs, how they work. There's one more picture, if you can find it, Dave, of a perch with one of the sidewinders hanging out of the side of its mouth. The reason that we use these is that small perch, thank you, small perch do not go after these crabs, only the biggest surf perch. So I would say 11 inches to 20 inches range. I don't know if they get any bigger than that. That's what you're going to catch off these sidewinder crabs. We're going to cover those in detail in your Saltwater Guides game plan this week, and we're going to talk about them next week again too.
So on those sidewinders, are you laying them on the bottom? Or are you letting them drift in the current? What are you fishing, light sinker, big sinker? What are we doing? How are we doing?
Who do you think you are that I'm going to give you all the secrets? I'm
That's
not going to
right.
let you know.
Nope, you got to go to the website, gang, and you got to see on Bill's bundles there on the game plans and all the tutorials and everything he has on the website. That's how you'll find out what weight to use, how to fish that thing, how to do all that. We'd love to be able to tell all of you all the secrets here, but that wouldn't be fair to Bill, wouldn't be fair to me, and it wouldn't be fair to all the members that are part of this whole thing. So if you want to learn how to do any of that stuff, if you want to be better at this fishing thing, if you're tired of sucking, just join our website, gang. We're a giant community of people that actually care what you catch. We do care about what you catch. One thing that's really cool, Bill, is the way everybody interacts with you. All the members that are part of your bundle, they call you all the time. They are so excited when they send you a picture of what they caught. And you tell them all the time. They're teaching you at the same time that you're teaching them.
Absolutely. I think I'm more excited than they are, to be honest with you. And it's really helpful, in the long run. And just going back to your question there that I'm not going to answer. Let me just put it this way, Dave. And for everybody watching, you're really going to be surprised about how we fish these baits. It is a technique you have never thought of before, and it is so productive. You'll be like, it's like the guy who invented the toothbrush. Like, how did I not invent the toothbrush? You will wonder how you didn't think of this simple little thing in the past. So there'll be a lot to learn there. But I'm sorry, the question was, I've lost my train of thought there.
The question was, what kind of a weight are you going to use? But we're not going to talk about it.
Sorry, I get so overwhelmed by these sidewinder crabs. It's something else. But all of that is great stuff, and really on the site you're going to learn so much about it. And like Dave was saying, this is what he was talking about, is I get it as excited, to be honest with you, with people contacting me and sending me pictures and giving me fish reports, as they're as excited about sending them to me. It's such great information. And I really want to take a moment now to thank everyone who sent me information about the grunion during our grunion period. I am really going to ask you again next year, which is coming up in like 3 months, to help me again with this grunion run information that you sent me. And I'm going to tell you why. The decision by the Department of Fish and Wildlife was made based on information that they received by a private group of citizen scientists. I was able to get a copy of the scientific observations, and their observations are diametrically opposed to the observations that all of you sent to me. The videos, the photographs, the personal statements about what you saw at the beach, completely different. So that's all being compiled so that information can go to the Department of Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they can take a look at it and see if they can revisit this idea about the grunion. So I just want to thank everybody for doing that. It was really thoughtful. And once again, I learned so much from it. I'm happy to tell you about it, and you guys learned so much from it too. It's such a great group. It's so exciting. We're having such a good time.
Yeah, you guys should be a part of it. You're missing out on just some great camaraderie and some love. And Bill, thank you so much for caring about all of us and doing all the things that you do. Trying to be an advocate and talk to the Fish and Wildlife and get things to even be looked at is a monumental achievement. And Bill, everybody that's watching this should have a big shout out of thank you to you, because to do what you're doing, it's almost impossible, gang, to get them to even look at anything once they make a decision on it. That's kind of, we're done. We've decided you can only have 30 grunion. Dun, da, da, da. And it's kind of sad because that was all done without any science. It was an emotional driven, like 99.9% of these regulations that are coming down the pipe nowadays, they're all emotionally based. They're not scientifically based. Why? Because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. If they actually spent the money that they were supposed to spend on science, Gavin Newsom would not be building this $8 million mansion he's in the middle of building right now, because he would have had to use that money on the science that he was supposed to use it on. I'm just telling the truth. You don't have to believe me. I don't care. But the only thing you get on this show is truth. And for Bill to be able to get him to even look at what he's talking about, that's a monumental achievement. Monumental. My hat's off to you, because you know me, I'm a grunion loving fool. I love fishing with them. I love hunting for them. I love taking kids and family down there. Yeah, and like Jason Cutter just said, 1 grunion equals 1 calico bass. Try to change my mind.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And Dave, it's so difficult communicating with the decision makers. As you and I talked about last week during the Fish and Game Commission last week, they were giving public comment periods. During their public comment periods, they were allowing people who wanted to make a public comment 60 seconds. I don't know how you can cover a complicated subject, or maybe put it this way. I don't know one complicated subject that I can cover in 60 seconds. I can barely stop talking about myself in 60 seconds. So that's really difficult. And the only way we can overcome that is by doing this research, whether it's citizen research or not, and then presenting it to each one of them in a written format, which requires them to take time to sit down and read it. And so that's what we're working on, and that really is the best way to move forward now.
And it's just amazing that they're actually listening. And I think that they're going to start to listen more here as we move in through January and start to get into the new administration, if you will. I think they're going to start to look at a lot of things a lot differently, which is really cool for us. And there is a lot of stuff that needs to happen. But this swell gang, we want you guys to do us a favor. Go out there, take some pictures, take some videos. Next week, when Bill and I are on the show together, if you can do that, send them to me or send them to Bill. We will post them on here. We'll give you all the credit. But we'd love to see what you guys are seeing. And we can't go down there and look at it. Bill can't go from Colorado to go take a picture of the waves. But you all can. You guys, most of you live in areas where you can see these waves. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Any of you up in Central California in that Morro Bay area, please go take some pictures from way high, though. Don't get down on the beach. Get up there take some pictures. We want to see them. Mavericks. I'd love to see Mavericks. Brent, you're up in that area. I'd love to see what that's looking like. That's going to be kind of an historic wave. Anybody, Devin Cruz, you know Morro Bay. You know it more than any of us. You know what that's going to be like. It's going to be incredible. And, yeah, climbing over the seawall, my dad, Dana Point would close it. Dana Point Harbor, gang, that long break wall is facing to the west. That is going to be explosive. If you can get up at the lookout point, if you can get up there on the road above the harbor and take pictures and videos of the break wall at Dana Point, it will be magnificent to see. And we have some old time pictures. My dad and Gene Stivers picking guys off the break wall there when it was a giant west swell. My dad had to pick him and Gene Stivers were picking guys out of the water. It was an incredible event. Don't go fishing on the break wall next week. Be careful out there. We're going to go back to Justin fishing live. Bill and I are going to end our show here right now. We'll go over to Justin live. I can see him in the corner. They haven't caught anything spectacular that I saw. We may have missed something when Bill and I were excitedly talking about you guys. Next week, Wednesday, I'm super looking forward to it because Bill and I want to see what you guys can send us. Right, Bill?
Absolutely. And I also wanted to add, I know Chris put a little note on there about the grunion dates. I just received the grunion dates from the Department of Fish and Wildlife a couple of days ago. And I am going to email those out in my newsletter. So I have a monthly newsletter. It's free of charge. It's only about surf fishing, fish report, conditions, pictures, all kinds of great stuff. Just go to my site, fishthesurf.com. fishthesurf.com. Go to the bottom of the page, just put your email address in there. And probably next week, I'll be emailing that out to everybody. It will give us all of the dates for the grunion runs this year. Once again, that's put together by the Fish and Wildlife. I'm not exactly sure how they do it. Dave and I can guess every year on what those dates are going to be, but they, have a crystal ball and they're incredibly accurate. I've yet to weasel out of them how they do that. So I just got it. It's not going to go public to any rest of the world for another month or so. So I'm going to get this out as soon as possible. So all the people on the inside will be able to see and make their plans for upcoming grunion runs coming up this spring.
And then I just put Bill's QR code up. If you guys are enjoying listening to him every Wednesday, you want to get more in depth and become a member of Bill's bundles, Bill's game plans, and everything that's going on with Bill and all the great articles that he's written. Everything's available over on the website. All you got to do, we're going to give you 7 days to look at it for free and see if it's even worth your time, because I know a lot of you would rather just go out there and wing it and figure it out on your own. But those of you that don't have time to wing it and figure it out on your own, jump over there and look at what Bill's got to offer you. We'll give you an absolute free look. When it gets to entering your credit card, you're going to notice that all over it has my phone number and Bill's phone number. You call us up, we will give you a free look. We don't want your money. We do not want you buying something you don't want. That is our promise to you. We want you to want what you're looking at. So check it all out for free, gang. Don't be afraid. Bill and I aren't thieves. We're really right here for all of you. So check it out. Bill, thank you again. What a great show. I'm so excited. I wish I was down at the beach to watch this devastating swell.
Yeah, it looks like fun. And thank you, Jason, for letting us know that all that grunion stuff is up on the DFW site now. That's good to know.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Back to Justin live fishing. See you guys.